thank you so much for tuning into this very special digital version of Comic-Con at Home 2021. My name is Clark Collis. I'm a senior writer at Entertainment Weekly, and I am extremely excited to be moderating Shudder's panel for Creepshow Season 3. We've got a fantastic panel for you. We've got some big news as to when you can see Creepshow Season 3. We've got a couple of clips from Creepshow Season 3. And I think most importantly, we have a hell of a panel. First up, it's my pleasure to introduce Creepshow showrunner and executive producer, Greg Nicotero. How's it going, Greg?
It's good. Good.
You might want to watch out, Greg. You got a few friends there might come after you in the course of the panel.
They just want to know when Creepshow's airing again, so they're waiting patiently.
Also joining us on the panel, we've got Maddie Doe, a writer-director, one of the people responsible for the story for the Season 3 episode, Drug Traffic. Hi, Maddie.
Bye. Hi, you guys.
We also have director Rusty Cundieff, who is director on the Season 2 episode, Sibling Rivalry, and also directed the Season 3 episode, Mums. How's it going, Rusty?
Fantastic, Clark. Great to be here with such an awesome, all these other people that I've kind of looked up to. So this is fantastic. Are we allowed to curse? I hope so.
We have actor Michael Rooker, who is on the Season 3 episode, Drug Traffic. Hi, Michael. How's it going?
Oh, good. Very well. Thank you.
And we also have actor James Remar, who's on the Season 3 episode Skeletons in the Closet. How's it going, James?
All's well.
Yeah.
Great.
On my couch talking with my friends.
Well, as I said, we've got plenty of questions for you good folks. We've got some clips to show from Season 3. But first of all, Greg, if I can start with you, I believe you have some exciting news about when people can actually watch Season 3 of Creepshow.
Yeah, well, we're still deep into the post process. We're mixing this month, doing all the visual effects, but the Season 3 premiere date will be September 23rd of 2021. And we have 6 episodes airing, and each episode is 2 stories, similar to what we did in Season 1 and 2. So I'm very excited. I'm super proud of Season 2, the crew and the cast. We got into it. We were one of the first long form productions to get back to work in August of last year. So I felt like we had a lot of responsibility to make sure that we had a safe environment, that we kept the crew and the cast and the actors safe. So I was really proud of the fact that not only were we able to generate Season 2, but we went right into Season 3. And I was, I was fortunate enough, to be able to call Rusty, who we went to the same high school together in Pittsburgh. And James and I worked together on Tales from the Dark Side, the movie, many moons ago, and have been good friends. And of course, Mr. Rooker and I killed a lot of zombies together.
Could you maybe tease a little bit about Season 3 for people watching? What can they expect?
There's a lot of, we have a Joe Hill story called Mums that Rusty directed, Ethan Embry stars in. There's a couple original stories. The story that James stars in is called Skeletons in the Closet, about a prop collector who, as it turns out, is such a fanatical fan that he digs up skeletons that were used in movies to add to his prop collection. So it's sort of loosely based on, the legend that in Dawn of the Dead and in Poltergeist, that they used real skeletons as props for movies. So I always love the idea of like, wait, that was a person and their skeleton was used. So John Esposito wrote the script, I directed it, and James came into play for a couple days. And Queen Bee, which was another episode that I directed that we'll see a clip from later, was written by Eric Sandoval and Michael Rousselet. Meter Reader, which is sort of our version of a little sort of nod to The Exorcist. We have a story called The Last Subaraya, which is written by Paul Dini and Stephen Langford, and it's a story about a art dealer who finds this super rare painting, but in pure Creepshow fashion decides he's going to burn it before anybody ever gets to see it, and he releases this demonic presence. So there's a lot of super fun stories. You know, Maddie pitched for season 2 this really interesting kind of like one paragraph thing, like, oh, there's a woman in Mexico and she's trying to get across the border, and she's gone to Mexico to get some medication that she can't get in the United States, and she gets stopped at the border because the medication's not legal in the United States, and it turns out that the medication keeps her from turning into this monster. That was literally this one little beautiful paragraph that I absolutely fell in love with. So I was really fortunate enough to be able to collaborate with her and Chris on what's one of the favorite things I've worked on in a long time. So, and that's called Drug Traffic, that stars Michael Rooker.
Well, Maddie, let me, because most of this ship of pirates kind of know each other one way and another. You're kind of a newbie to the Creepshow scene. I first came across you when I saw a fantastic horror film you made called Dearest Sister at the Brooklyn Horror Film Festival a few years ago. And if people haven't seen that, they really should check it out. And you've made other films as well. But how did you get in? How did you get involved in Creepshow? And what did sort of Creepshow mean to you growing up?
Actually, Creepshow came out in 82 and I was born in 81, but I remember it. So I don't know what the hell my parents were thinking, obviously, like letting me watch that, because I remember something so vividly. And perhaps it's because I had an older brother in the house too. And so, we were huge comic book fans and huge horror fans. And so I grew up with Creepshow, and to have the opportunity to work on Creepshow was probably like one of the biggest things that I had, like, completely out of my expectation. But I think I was introduced to Creepshow because of Shudder, and that was Dearest Sister, the film that you saw. And Dearest Sister was a Shudder exclusive, and I believe that it's also the first Lao film to ever get distribution in the US or in North America, for that matter. And so because Shudder and AMC already knew me through Dearest Sister, I think it just happened really naturally and organically that they're like, hey, would you like to try and put up some ideas for Greg to read for Creepshow? And like, I didn't even realize that like sending a sentence or two for a pitch wasn't normal. And so I'm so happy that Greg liked my tiny paragraph of ideas.
I did.
And obviously the original Creepshow was, written by Stephen King and directed by George Romero. And Michael, you appeared in the Dark Half, which was also based on a Stephen King book and directed by George Romero. What do you remember about that?
A lot of birds. We had about maybe 7,300 birds, little sparrows, finches, I think. And the animal trainer would train them to go from room to room and room to room, and they'd let them out, and they, as we were in the house, they'd let them out, and you got 7,000 birds coming straight at you. What do you do? There was no acting involved. It was just great, and you're getting poop all over you, and so it really kind of was. That's one of my fondest memories of working, and George, of course, was great to work with, and we had a great time. The entire cast was awesome, and so good stuff. Pittsburgh was great. Yeah, it was great.
It's interesting. I hadn't, I guess subliminally, I tend to continue to connect and to perpetuate the Romero legacy, because Rusty's from Pittsburgh and James was in Tales from the Dark Side, which was produced by George. So even in my weird way, I sort of subliminally, like I cast them because they're great actors and Rusty's a great director. But then I'm like, oh, wait a minute, but they do have a connection to the Romero universe, which, like, Michael, I think when we were working, at one point I turned and I went, hey, wait a minute, I forgot you were in the Dark Half. Like,
Yeah.
It's really strange. I mean, so many people think that, look, George was this auteur director who his films were very personal and they were modest budgets, but if you really step back and think about how far his influence reached, I think it's really interesting.
Michael, tell us a little bit about your character in Drug Traffic, and if you can't say too much, what it was like shooting the story.
Well, I'm an officer that guards the border, right? And folks are coming in, and I'm quite. I want to go home. You know, it's about that time. I'm cleaning up, getting ready to leave, and this bus comes in, and all of a sudden we got all these people, and it's like, oh, geez, give me a break. So you know, I'm kind of like, okay, come on. But there are certain things that catch my attention that I can't ignore. And hence, I have to pull a lady aside and do a big interview and talk, and then the rest becomes absolute mayhem and fun stuff. So you should.
I think mayhem and fun stuff could be the tagline for the whole show, really. Greg, we have a clip from Drug Traffic. Could you set it up a little bit for us?
Yeah. So, you know, when Maddie pitched this story, I really, one of the first things that I had said was to sort of lean into her heritage in terms of whatever this supernatural creature is, because there is a person, there's a character in the episode that without this medication can't control. Can't control itself and turns into this mythological creature. So the creature that they came up with that is unlike anything that I've ever seen or imagined. Maddie, do you want to talk for a second about that creature?
Did I spoiler it? Like, are you fine with that?
It's so cool.
Okay. I mean, I was so happy when Greg let me dig into my Southeast Asian heritage, because I'm a mutt. I'm Lao, Thai, and Vietnamese. And usually when you think of a show like Creepshow, it's classic. You have vampires and werewolves and zombies and ghosts and etc., which we all love no matter what country you're from. But I was like, we have some pretty messed up stuff here in Southeast Asia. And he was just like, go for it. So we have this monster that there are male versions, but it's typically female, where on certain nights it becomes extremely hungry. And so the head detaches from the body, and its entrails and heart hang from its neck. But it's this beautiful woman. And so like what she does is she'll like peek over at people, like over a wall or through your window, and you feel bad because you're like, oh, this poor person, this poor beautiful woman who's hungry and just wants to be let in. And yeah, once she's in, she eats you, like all of you. She goes for the entrails first. And her name, they call her Kasu, or Kasu in Thailand. Yeah, it's pretty.
Well, I'll tell you, it was the craziest. I was sending Maddie videos while we were developing the look of this particular creature. And even on set, Reed Scott, who is the other actor who plays the congressman, Reed and Michael were so great together. And just, when I did the first cut and we see this head floating down the hallway with the entrails hanging out, it's so wild and it's so unique and so different. Unfortunately, you're not going to get to see it right now, because what we're about to see is that this young woman named Mai has been unable to control herself, and the mother has been detained by Michael Rooker's character.
Well, let's see the clip.
Miss, you okay in there? Whoa! Damn it!
Do not come in here unless you have my daughter's body!
Ma'am, come on now.
It's all your fault! She just needed her medicine!
I cannot let that thing cross the border. You know that.
That thing is my daughter, and she's an American citizen.
Excuse me, ma'am, but I'm not sure if that fact has much relevance at this exact moment. Miss,
Oh, dog! Got it.
Officer, I found something.
Fine. Okay, ma'am. It's okay.
That was a clip from the story Drug Traffic from season 3 of Creepshow. Season 3 of Creepshow premieres on Shudder September 23rd. If I can turn to another of our panelists, Rusty Cundieff. Rusty, you directed Sibling Rivalry, a story from season 2, and you're directing the story Mums in season 3. Sibling Rivalry, you know, I mean, all of the stories all the stories in all of the creep shows have been terrific. But I love the way with Sibling Rivalry that you kind of didn't know what the hell was going on for the first half of it, really, that it was hugely entertaining. And I almost don't want to say what it was a sort of spin on, because I think if people haven't seen it, that is like a big surprise. What was it like? What was it like working on that story?
It was quite a blast, actually. The script was fantastic, and the words were just all on the page. So it was just a matter of, as it often is with a good script when you're directing, just don't f it up, don't make bad choices. And the cast was fantastic. I mean, you know, we had Molly Ringwald. There was this young lady named Maddie, I think it was Maddie Nichols, who played the lead in that, and she was just fantastic. Her delivery and everything was great. So for me, it was just a matter of, you know, making sure that I got all the moments and then enjoying all the practical mayhem of blood and guts and vampire teeth that Greg's crack team allowed us to show. I mean, it's not that often that you get to work with practical effects nowadays, because everything is so digital and so kind of processed in. So it was kind of a blast.
And how did you get together with Greg in the first place? Have you known him a while?
Greg and I went to high school together, so that belies both of our ages, I guess. And we went to high school together. And then Greg also did effects for me on the first horror film that I directed, which was Tales from the Hood. Greg did like a lot of the effects for Clarence Williams III on that, and all the kind of monstery stuff. And I, for years, actually, on my Halloween display out in the front lawn, I still had one of the charred skeletons that Greg made, and I would throw it out there to scare the kids. But Greg and I have known each other for a while, so it was you know, fun finally working with him again.
I felt really fortunate because Rusty and I, you know, I think we had called him on season 1 to come down and shoot, and he wasn't available, you know, and look, I mean, for a director like Rusty, who he understands the anthology world, you know, when you hire a director on a show like this, I feel like the first thing I have to do is apologize, because it's like, okay, you got about 3.5 days. You know, we were hoping that we would be able to sort of squeak our shoot dates a little bit further, but then when James came, we had 3 days. I think we shot all of James's stuff in skeletons in 1 day. So the first thing I do is kind of apologize and say, look, man, you know, it's going to be down and dirty and quick, but just have fun. And I really feel like, you know, the cast that we've been able to get in the crew, and Mums was different because I wrote the script. You know, it was based on a Joe Hill story. And, you know, when the pandemic started, that was the first thing that I did. I'm like, well, I got some time, so I can sit down and write this script. And then of course I was in prep, so I couldn't even be there with Rusty when he was shooting. So I ran in, I think the last day he had some other scenes to shoot, and I'm like, I got it. It was like tag team, and then I was in and he went.
Yeah, I gotta say, Greg's crew, I'm just a fantastic, his DP, Rob Draper, and I think he had another DP too, but I work with Rob. God, man, just a great group of people, and just so on top of things, which you have to be when you're shooting so fast. It was never a crew problem. the entire time that we shot, and we had some issues that we had to deal with just in terms of, the weather and stuff like that. And they were just on top of it. It was a fantastic experience. So thanks.
Could you tease the story a little bit, Rusty?
It kind of takes place in this little farming area. It deals with some social issues that I won't give away, but very lightly. And I give Greg big props for that, because I love social stuff. If you've ever seen any of my other films, I'm always dealing with some kind of social thing. But this deals with it in a very, very light way that allows the horror to progress. But it's about this kid whose father and mother aren't quite getting along. And the father decides that he needs to do a little something with the mom. And there's, I don't know how much I'm allowed to say about it actually, but there's some great physical stuff in a garden. And, there's death and there's blood and all the good that Greg always brings to all of his stuff. So it's a slow tease. It's a slow tease.
Well, look, it's based on one of Joe Hill's short story called Mums. And, I was really proud because I got to adapt a Stephen King story for the animated episode called Survivor Type. So I felt like being able to adapt, being able to adapt a Joe Hill story, keeping it in the family, so to speak, and turning it over to Rusty and Ethan Embry and the rest of the actors. I was pretty excited.
Yeah, Ethan is awesome in this, by the way. I mean, he kicks ass major. All the cast is great, but Ethan, really.
Oh yeah, he's fantastic. And moving on to our final panelist, James Remar. James, as Greg mentioned, you were in Tales from the Dark Side. What do you remember about that?
Well, this is one of my favorite personal photographs. I guess it's me as a punk rocker and Greg as a heavy metal guitarist, and we haven't changed at all. It's a fantastic memory. I'm a huge fan of anthology series. I just love them. Even going back to acting school on stage, we did these poems called Spoon River anthologies, and you had to memorize like 5 or 6 of them and just get in there and do it quickly. But getting to Tales from the Dark Side, I'm very emotionally attached to it because it's such a pure piece, and it's related to a Japanese story, what they call kwaidan, which means scary story in Japanese. And it's long story short, is a guy meets a snow woman in the woods, and she falls in love with him and says, "Promise you'll never tell anyone you saw me, and I'll spare you," because they steal their breath and kill you. And he says, I promise I'll never tell." So he goes back home and shows up in his village. They fall in love. They get married. 10 years later, he tells her, "There's something I never told you." And she says, "You promised you'd never tell." And in the case of the Japanese one, she just leaves him. But in the case of Tales from the Dark Side, she tears my throat out, and Greg put on this fantastic appliance, and I'm just like, oh, there's a trachea hanging out, and and then it's answered nearly 25 years later. Greg's guy Jake and Greg was there, put an appliance on my head for Django Unchained, where I got my head blown off, and it's all connected. And Skeletons in the Closet is very much a legacy kind of piece where one generation is a collector and then passing the torch to the younger ones who are even more macabre.
So basically, if you have a role in Greg Nicotero walks through the door, then your character is not going to be may not be around for the final credits.
So far, I mean, third time's the charm, but third time's it's hard to know what happens.
I think it's safe to say, Clark, that's probably a good good thing. Most of the people that get hired to work in something that I produce or direct probably won't end well for them. But the thing about James that I love is he really is like he can go toe to toe with you on any monster trivia he's a big horror fan. And when we came up with this idea for skeletons, and we built this little prop museum, and I actually shipped some of my original props from Los Angeles to Atlanta because I wanted to populate the museum. And, you know, the two characters that own the museum, they're, you know, the character's name is Lampini. So he's named after the Karloff's, after House of Frankenstein. And Danielle is his girlfriend's name, which was Daniel. So it's kind of Little House of Frankenstein. Everything in those movies are either movie quotes or references. You know, we have a Phantasm thing. We have a Seventh Voyage of Sinbad, an Army of Darkness thing. We have a Psycho thing. We really tried to hit like the ultimate movie nerd episode in terms of the story. And, you know, being a prop collector myself and understanding the level of which people will go to acquire a prop from a movie. So James and I would stand on set and he's like, hey, did you see Svengoolie last night? Oh man. Or I'll get a text, hey, the Crawling Eye's on tonight. I mean,
There's one question that somebody sent in. Appropriately enough, this is from @VincentPrices. And the question is really about an episode of Creepshow from, I think, season 2, Night of the Living Late Show, in which Justin Long plays a character. This is an episode directed by Greg. Justin Long plays a character who invents like the ultimate virtual reality device in which he can insert himself essentially into his favorite horror movie. And you know, as is traditional with Creepshow stories, things don't quite turn out for him that well in the end. But the question from Vincent Prices is, if you had a virtual reality machine, which horror movie would you transport yourself into?
It's a tricky one because you got to figure if you're going into the movie, then if it's a horror movie, you're likely to get chainsawed or eaten by a shark or eaten by zombies. So you got to be a little cautious. But you know, we put the line in there in the episode where Justin says to Darcy, look, you can go into The Godfather, you can go into Jaws. So of course I would want to go into Jaws, but I would want to make sure I never left the beach. I would be the guy in Jaws that's on the beach.
Don't get on that boat.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But, you know, I think Jaws would be the movie, but it doesn't necessarily even have to be a horror movie because, you know,
right.
There's always that game everybody plays, you know, like when you're makeup effects and you're working in the shop, it's like, if you could go back in time and work on any movie, what would you work on? And it's either King Kong or Creature from the Black Lagoon. But, you know, if you could go into any movie, not necessarily a horror movie, I would be curious to hear like just opening it up to whatever movie. As long as you can't pick a movie you were already in, though, guys.
I'd go High Noon.
Oh,
Little Western thing going on.
I would pick from the horror. I would pick George Pal's The Time Machine, because then I would get to battle Morlocks and be with Yvette Mimieux.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, there you
go. Yeah.
I love that movie.
And then you could go back and forth and do it over and over. That's really smart. Why didn't I think of that? Because then you could like stay in there and go visit other movie sets with the time machine.
With the time machine.
And remake the endings I didn't like.
Maddie, what about you?
I mean, if I could actually go into a non-horror movie, I would want to go to the Paris of Ratatouille and just like eat everything that rat cooks, right? I would be like that rat's #1 fan. I don't know. Like maybe Shape of Water is not really a horror movie, is it? But I really like hard-boiled eggs and turning my home into a swimming pool. You know, it's kind of like this flamingo swimming pool I have on my driveway. But like if I could turn my whole house into a swimming pool and have hard-boiled eggs, that's pretty awesome. I mean
you can have hard-boiled eggs anyway. You know this, right?
I had one this morning.
What about you, Rusty, finally?
If it's a non-horror movie, I would want to be either on the set or in taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3, the original,
Oh,
with
nice.
Walter Matthau and Robert Shaw and Marty Balsam and Hector Elizondo. That's just like, that's a movie I watch practically every year, because you couldn't make a movie like that anymore, because it's such an ensemble. People who show up on the screen one time have an awesome line, and you're just not allowed to do that shit anymore.
Before we depart, we do have one more amazing clip to show. This is from a story called Queen Bee. Greg, could you set this up a little bit for us?
Yes. So this was written by Eric Sandoval and Michael Rousselet. The idea is that these kids are fans of a Beyonce type singer, and they find out that she's pregnant and she's having a baby. So they want to sneak into the hospital to get pictures of the baby to sell to the tabloid. So again, you know, I think like what Rusty was saying, all of our stories have some social relevance and a little comeuppance in terms of what people feel they have a right to privacy, right to medication, or this or that, whatever. So in this particular episode, these kids sneak into this hospital, and the goal is to see this woman, Regina, who's, you know, this sort of amazing singer, and they get a little more than they bargained for.
Fantastic. Well, let's see a clip from the Creepshow season 3 story, Queen Bee. Fantastic. Okay, well, folks, this has been such a blast. You know, I'm just, it's been such a pleasure talking to you all today. And thank you everybody for being here. I have been speaking with Greg Nicotero, Maddie Doe, Rusty Cundieff, Michael Rooker, and James Remar. Folks, thank you so much. This has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you everybody for watching. You have been watching our Creepshow panel at Comic-Con at Home 2021. Don't miss season 3 of Creepshow on Shudder September 23rd, and catch up on season 2 of Creepshow on AMC beginning September 6th. Until we all meet again, hopefully in person, keep it creepy.
Bye.
Bye, bye, bye.